Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islamic Awakening with me, Reza Ghazim. Stephen Hawking is a scientist, yet he's had the audacity to say that God doesn't exist. Why doesn't he stick to his day job in contributing to the progression of science? What challenges does this poster boy for atheism pose for monotheism? Does the monotheist actually have an answer for the atheist, or has the concept of God been marginalized to the realm of the backward and the uneducated? Has the evolutionist triumphed over the creationist? Or is it simply a case of opportunism that, as in the case of the experimenter Leon Lederman, who labelled the Higgs particle that was being sought at the Large Hadron Collider as the God particle? Scientists know that controversy around God sells. Or is this a cynical take on an age-old controversy? To address these issues, we have our esteemed guest, Professor Tariq Ramadan. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I would like to start off by asking you, do these scientists even deserve the attention they get when they use the concept of God, which they often don't believe in, to peddle their theories? And also, why must we respond to them?
No, I think we have to take this seriously because, of course, they are in a field where we are talking about science, and they are coming and trying to explain how things work and how things are, in fact, in reality. And sometimes they go further than that and come with some of the answers, and they are great minds. And I think that as much as some of them, and not all of them, are arrogant with their knowledge, we should not be arrogant with our answer. So that's none of your business. You don't have to answer. Of course, they are human beings and they have the right. He has the right to have an opinion about God and say, I don't believe. Now, we have to differentiate in our answer between his personal belief and his scientific knowledge. Because his belief is not the scientific knowledge, it's just his position. And as much as we have to respond to this, we have to come with something which is very important in this discussion, is to know what are the facts and to acknowledge what are the limits. This is the starting point of a discussion with a scientist.
One of the things that sometimes people would argue that because they are a scientist and because they're attacking religion and they're coming from the Western development and the relationship between religion and science, and therefore they're given attention more than is perhaps due to them. Is that an unfair accusation?
No, it's true, of course, because they are in a field where they are very knowledgeable. These are great minds, as I said, and of course sometimes we are overestimating what they are bringing into the discussion. But once again, at the same time, it's quite interesting to listen to what they are saying, because in fact, Stephen Hawking is not criticizing religion. He is stating his belief. I don't think that the universe needs God. And this is a starting point. Say the starting point is not even the Big Bang, is the quantum fluctuation. This is the way he sees. He sees the whole thing. So we can go further and say, okay, let us go for this discussion, because I want to know if what you are saying here is, these are facts or hypotheses. And if it's hypothesis, so it's where science is ending and where our beliefs are on equal footing. So I would say that it's good for us to enter into this discussion for two reasons. The first one is to take science seriously, but also to know what is scientific and what is hypothetical. This is one thing. The second for us, from a religious viewpoint, is to be very clear that it's not because we have a deep faith that we are rejecting science. This is in fact the problem in the West. In the West, we have a history where the church was saying not too much rationality. Blaise Pascal, the French philosopher, was saying we have to write against those who are going too far in science. So saying science is dangerous. We never had this in the Islamic tradition. We are not coming from the same background. What we are saying is that there is nothing in the Quran which is against science, but we should never be scared of science, because we'll never find in science something which is against our religion, if we understand both in a very deep way and not with a superficial understanding.
One of the things that is threads that seems to be coming out of these arguments about, that there are a set of mathematical laws which can kind of like unify nearly everything that is going to be said, and that's what is being sought after. So in a sense, one of the arguments that is put forward is that actually God is not needed because all of these mathematical laws actually sum everything up. So is God needed?
It's interesting that you are putting things like this, because this is really the way scientists will talk or speak about God, saying, is he needed? From a religious viewpoint, it's not a question of a need. It's a question of faith, and it's a question of a reality. This is, one of the names of God in our tradition is Al-Haq. He is truth. So it's not, do I need him for him to exist? No, that's the wrong way of putting the equation. This is a rationalist way of dealing with it. But at the same time, when they are coming with this, say, okay, you know what? The universe is autonomous. We don't need a creator to explain. No, you don't need a creator to explain how it works, but not why it is. That's completely different. Because even this law that you are talking about, where do they come from? Come like this? It's as if, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the French philosopher, was saying once, he said, the people who believe that there is no God are like the people who have letters of the alphabet, and then you throw them away and you have the dictionary. It doesn't work like this. You can explain how, but you cannot explain why. And this is a very old philosophical discussion. So the people that we have coming from the scientist background now, some of them are very cautious. And this is where I find it right. When we have, for example, one of the greatest astrophysician today, by saying, my limits is to say the way I look at the world, but I need to be humble, intellectually speaking, and not to answer to this question. And he was coming with something which is exactly the point that you were raising before. Say, my contribution to science is so much and so important for the people that I have to be very cautious with my personal answer to the meaning of life. So I'm suspending my answer in order not to confuse the fields, which is the intellectual humility that we need. On the other side, it would be good for Muslims to stop having a very superficial understanding of science. For example, coming from all this discussion when it comes to evolution. You have some Muslims who are coming with very superficial understanding, say, the very moment you speak about evolution, it means that you are against the Quran. They don't know about Islam, they don't know about the Quran, and they don't know about science. And this is where we have to come to a discussion a bit more equipped, not in a simplistic way, because by this, we are acting against science and against religion at the same time. And I think that both are needed, because science are helping us to have a better faith, and faith is helping us to have a better understanding of what science could be in our life.
It's interesting. I just want to go back on something that you said earlier, that you said that they can talk about the how, but they don't, going into the realm of the why becomes problematic. Do we have an answer? Do the Muslims have an answer to the why?
Yes, of course.
And what is that answer?
So the answer is exactly, the answer is exactly where you acknowledge the fact that you can know a lot, but you cannot know everything. It's the limitation. It started, in fact, not even with Islam. It's the rational, natural way of looking at things when Socrates is saying, I know that I know nothing. That's it. You know that you know nothing, meaning you can know a lot, but at one point, there is a final question, why am I here? So I can answer how I can deal with my life, but how? And this is why we are saying that this is why we need God. The need of God here for us is coming from our intellectual yearning towards the meaning of life. Why am I here?
If I can interrupt here, because you're saying it's our need, and one of the arguments that is sometimes put forward is this thing that it is precisely that. It is the need of man to have a God as opposed to God actually existing. And so therefore, you're arguing in those terms. So how does that work?
No, but that's a very interesting question, because for somebody who is starting with rationality, of course, you say, oh, it's a need and you are yearning for an answer, so you created God, which is Feuerbach, the German philosopher, was saying, man is a God for man. So we created God. From an Islamic viewpoint, a religious viewpoint, is the other way around. In fact, what we are saying is that God put in our heart a spark yearning for Him. So in fact, it's exactly the opposite. The need for Him is coming from Him, only if you believe in Him. If you get that right. So it's not, it couldn't be a rationalist response. And this is why in our discussion with atheists, sometimes we are trying to convince them of His presence. It cannot be rationally proven. And this is why anyone who is trying to prove the existence of God from a rationalist viewpoint is not going to succeed. It has to do with your heart. It has, and this is why you have in the Quran, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. They have heart, but they don't understand with their heart. It's all in the brain. It's an equation, 1 + 1. Dostoevsky responded to this, you know what? It could be that 1 + 1, it's not 2. It could be something else. So it means here that we are dealing with something which is not rational and not rationalistic, but in fact it's not rationalistic, but it's not irrational, because rationally you understand that you don't have the answer for everything, and in our daily life it's very simple. Give me the reason of your love. You can tell me he or she has such qualities, and then okay, at the end this is not the final equation of love. There is something else. That's exactly our relationship with faith and God. It's all the equations, all the logic that you are putting in your understanding, there is something which is missing. We have to deal with this, but I would say here that it's very important not to come with this, with something which is, I keep on repeating this because it's essential, because I have met so many scientists, from Dawkins to Hawking. I debated them, atheists. And you can see sometimes, not with Stephen Hawking, but with Dawkins, arrogance in the way, say, how come could you still believe in this? We are in the 21st century, for God's sake. He wouldn't say for God's sake, but this is what he means. So he would say, it's not possible to think about this in that way. And this is why the starting point of this is to challenge them as, please, be humble, intellectually speaking. Because you can tell me so many things about the how, but at the end, I want you to answer this. What is the meaning of your death? So if you want to have a rationalist answer, it's up to you. But don't tell me that this is the final answer. So the starting point of our scientific journey, even when we deal with hypotheses, is to be intellectually humble, and also to be very clear on, be careful. The scientific facts of today could have been the hypothesis of yesterday, but there are also sometimes hypotheses today. So for example, about the evolution, when we talk about Darwin, for example, I don't have a problem with evolution. I have a problem with some of his hypotheses about how evolution works, because in the Quran, Sawwarakum wa khalaqakum wa sawwarakum. Khalaqakum is the creation. Sawwarakum is shaped you, and we can understand that it's through history that this happened. And this is not new. In the end of the 19th century, we have scholars saying we don't have a problem with thinking that through time, even the concept of yawm, sittati ayam, so that you have yawm, it's one day, but in Arabic it's a circle. It could be a period of time. So it could be periods, cycles of time. It could be more than thousands and hundreds of thousands years. So we don't have a problem with this.
This issue about, and you said it very eloquently earlier, that this idea of how evolution is thought of by Muslims and how it's interpreted, and what you're talking about within the Quran is a lot of it, is matching up with what the Darwinian evolution is about. Now, clearly there are some things that are similar, but there are other things that are not. So where does that distinction take place? Because obviously the theory of evolution in itself has evolved.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
Where are we with that?
Yes, you are right. I think first we have to start by saying the Quran is not a book of science. It's not a scientific book. It's a book that 2/3 of the book is about morality, ethics. It's not about science. What we are saying as Muslims is that because the book is coming from God, this is part of Al-Aqidah, this is our credo, means that nothing in the Quran will be against science. So when, for example, you have, the theory of evolution, it's coming, and say, okay, there are facts. We don't have a problem with the facts. But we have to be very cautious not to take for facts what are hypotheses coming from trying to understand the phenomenon. And this is what we have here, for example, when they are saying, the origin, it's not coming from God, it's an evolution. We say, no. It might be that here it's a hypothesis. You are adding to facts an understanding beyond the limitation, and this is exactly what we have even with the Big Bang. When, for example, you have somebody like Stephen Hawking saying, no, it was not a Big Bang. Oh, so I thought it was a fact. No, it's not a fact. These are hypotheses. So I would say here that from a religious viewpoint, when you have facts or facts that could appear as being against our religion, the intellectual position is wait and see, because it could be that we have to go further. And what I was talking with biologists, for example, here in the UK and the States, they were telling me, among biologists, we are questioning so many things about Darwin. So all the people who are now coming and saying this is the final answer to explain the world, they are wrong, because we ourselves, within science, as scientists, we are questioning this. So we, as people of faith, we have to be very cautious not to take the current answer as the final answer and try to do something which is coming to the Quran and say, oh, we have this in the Quran, because it could be wrong. The truth of today could be wrong, could be a hypothesis. And we have too many Muslims, in order to prove, the truth of the Quran, they are adapting the interpretations of the Quran now with some scientific hypothesis of today. This is wrong as well. Don't translate this into a scientific reading of the Quran, where the Quran is not about this. Nothing in the Quran is about against science, but the science of today, it's not the final way of reading the Quran.
But one of the things that comes out of this, that people want to show that, look, and one of the arguments that is put by Muslims is, look, the Quran has given us this theory 1400 years ago, before even these things were out and about. It wasn't even being thought of. And so therefore they're looking to be, to be able to prove that, look, these facts are now here. And so their interpretations, should they not happen at all? Because there is that desire to fulfill, or, how's that going to work?
Yes, I think there is something also which is legitimate from an Islamic viewpoint. For example, if, as we believe, the Quran is coming from God, there are some of the things that we'll find in the Quran that are quite amazing. How come this was known in the 7th century? So nothing in the Quran is against science, but there are in the Quran things that say, wow, that's something which is deep. Which happened to Cousteau. Cousteau, who was dealing with nature, say, how come in the Quran I can find a verse telling me that between the salt water and the soft water there will be a barrier? How come? That's impossible. It's in the Quran. It's بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. So you find this, that there is something which is between the cells that from the salt water and the soft water. There is something which is they are not mixing. How come? بَلَا قَادِرِينَ عَلَىٰ أَن نُسَوِّيَ بَنَانَا. It's not only in the Quran it is said, we can create you again, it's even your finger. How come in the 7th century, the finger, what is special with the finger? The footprint, the fingerprint you are the only one having them on earth. And God is telling you, I can come with this again. So what we are saying is that, yes, in the Quran sometimes we will find things that are in fact there, that science today are helping us to get a better understanding of the Quran. And this is why we should not be scared of science. It's the other way around. Sometimes the scientific discoveries today are helping us to get a better understanding of the Quran, that is the eternal book. So we need to have this way of dealing with science, which is not being scared, not going too fast and too quick to conclusion, but at the same time to take the questions, and this is all good. I'm dealing with lots of scientists and they are helping me to have a better faith, because a deeper faith means a deeper understanding of the world.
One of the things that you talked about was this idea about limitation and so on. One of the questions that's sometimes posed between the evolutionist and creationist, that there is a battle going on between those two, and certainly in terms of sometimes lessons being taught in schools and so on, that can come up as an issue that Muslims will say, okay, we really don't want this evolutionary theory being taught and so on. How is that going to be negotiated by both sides? Because from what you're saying, there seems to be almost a false question or false...
Yes, a false, at least, polarization between the two. And we have to be very cautious. Many, not so many, but we have trends within the Muslim communities in the West and even in Muslim majority countries that are taking from Christian creationists theories, and they are translating this into the Islamic framework. I think that is very dangerous. We have nothing to do with this, in fact. In fact, we have nothing to do with a kind of very simplistic way of dealing with creationism. What we can accept is something which is intelligent design. That's something which is part of a perception that there is an evolution, but God wanted this evolution to happen the way it's happening. So, by this, what we have to be very cautious with is not to come with a translation of the Christian creation and say, no evolution, nothing happened, the world was, and it's literalism. That's not us. That's not our understanding of things. So as I was telling you, even with the Quranic concepts, Yom is not one day, 24 hours. It could be a cycle. It could be a period of time.
Is that your interpretation that you're putting on it, and therefore later on that could in itself become an issue?
No, of course, but this is exactly a very interesting point. Is that in fact, when you are dealing with the world, you read the verse of the Quran and all of a sudden say, what is the meaning of this word? And the traditional understanding, when you have sometimes science and the reality of the world is pushing you to reassess your understanding of the verse. As I was telling you why the finger was perceived at the point it was perceived and understood in the 7th century as a very small part of your body. Now we understand it's deeper than that. So some of the concepts that we have in the Quran, we have to reassess our interpretation. This is why science is helping us to have a better understanding of the Quran. So it's the other way around. You should not be scared of science, but science are helping us to get a deeper understanding of the Quran. So these interpretations are not new. There are things that we have been working, and scientists and Muslim scholars have been dealing with over, at least when we are talking about creationists, over the last century. And I think that this is very important. So the simplistic creationist take on science, that's problematic. We need to be very cautious with this. Evolution, it's not a problem for us. The hypothesis put over the evolution theory or evolutionist theory, this is why we have to be involved in the discussion.
Thank you very much, Professor Tariq. Unfortunately, we've run out of time at this moment. And one of the things that's come out very strongly, and we've touched on a number of things, that this idea that this discussion and this question around creationism and evolution being in rivalry may well be a false polarization. There's also this idea that we need to look at this whole thing in terms of limitations, that yes, we can talk about the how, but there is very limited that people, the scientists, need to be humble in the way that they're actually going about, the way that they ask the questions, that they answer the questions, and they need to really think about very carefully that what are their limitations. You can answer up to a point, but beyond that point, whether it's going backwards in time to the idea of the Big Bang, or whether you're going forward in time, there is a limitation that you can't actually go beyond that and be able to answer it. And that's where religion, if you like, is coming in. Unfortunately, the time is up for today's topic. I would like to thank Professor Tariq Ramadan again, and of course all of you at home for watching. Goodbye until the next time and another edition of Islamic Awakening.